"You're mine now," declared the fierce virgin he discovered waiting in his inherited lodge. Nature, mountains, and old lodges had always been something he only saw in pictures or on TV. So when he received the letter telling him he had inherited a lodge in the remote mountains, he felt more confusion than excitement. The letter was formal and simple. The lodge had belonged to his great-uncle, a man John barely remembered. There were no stories about the man, no instructions, just a legal note confirming John's ownership. At first, John thought it would be a simple weekend trip. He could take a few pictures, maybe sell the property and return to his city life. But the mountains had other plans. When John arrived, the winding road up the mountain was narrower than he expected. Trees crowded the edges and mist hung low, curling around the trunks like ghosts. He had to drive slowly, the engine humming under him as the lodge appeared between the trees. It was old but solid. Wooden beams darkened with age, windows glinting in the weak afternoon sun. Smoke rose from the chimney. That was impossible. John stopped the car, staring. Smoke meant fire, fire meant people, or at least someone had been there. And he knew he was supposed to be alone. As he walked toward the lodge, the door creaked open, and there she was. Lyra stood in the doorway, tall and strong, with hair pulled back and eyes sharp as hawks. She did not smile. She did not step aside. She simply said in a voice calm but firm, "You're mine now." John blinked. "Excuse me," he asked. "You heard me," Lyra said. "This lodge is mine. You are welcome to visit, but you do not own it." John laughed nervously. "I think there's been a mistake. This property belongs to me. It was left to me in a will." Lyra's expression didn't change. "The mountains don't care about wills. The lodge doesn't care about your paperwork. You only own it if you can take it." The wind whispered through the trees as John took in the scene. He was not used to confrontation, especially not in a place that smelled of pine and earth. And yet there was something in Lyra that made him pause. She was confident, calm, prepared. She did not tremble, she did not cower, and she did not plead. "Who are you?" John asked. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I've been here for a year. I live off this land. If you want this lodge, you'll have to learn to survive here first." John opened his mouth to argue but found no words. City logic did not apply here. City authority did not matter. Here, the mountain was the law. He realized he had underestimated this place and her. He stepped back and looked at the lodge. It was larger than it appeared from the road. Its walls were thick logs, windows small but sturdy, and the roof sloped steeply to shed snow. A pile of firewood lay stacked neatly beside the porch. Signs of careful living were everywhere. A small garden with hardy plants, paths cleared of rocks, and a pulley system for hauling water from the stream below. This was someone who knew what she was doing. "And if I don't want to learn?" John asked cautiously. Lyra smiled faintly. It was a smile without warmth but full of certainty. "Then the lodge is yours in paper only. You will be a visitor at best." John glanced at the mountains around him. Mist clung to the peaks, and shadows stretched long across the valley. For the first time in his life he felt small, but he also felt a spark of curiosity. This wasn't just a test of ownership, it was a challenge, a puzzle, and he loved puzzles. "I suppose," John said slowly, "I could try. I don't know anything about surviving here, but I can learn." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "We'll see," she said. "First, get inside. It's cold and you have a lot to see." The interior of the lodge was warm, the scent of burning pine filling the air. It was simple but functional. Wooden tables, shelves lined with jars and tools, a fireplace in the center. Every item had a purpose. John noticed a small workbench, a stack of carefully folded blankets, and even a homemade trap near the back door. This was not just a home, it was a fortress. Lyra handed him a mug of hot tea. John accepted it, surprised by the warmth and comfort. He took a slow sip and realized that for all its simplicity, this place was more alive than any city apartment he had ever seen. You survive alone? John asked. Lyra nodded. Alone, yes, but the mountain teaches you to rely on your mind. You can't rely on machines here. You can't rely on luck. Only skill matters. John frowned. Skill like hunting and gathering, Lyra shrugged. Skill like seeing a problem and solving it. Humans can do more than they think, even city people, even you if you try. Something inside John shifted. He felt the thrill of challenge, the excitement of a place that demanded more than money or authority. He had always admired cleverness in books and films, but now he was face to face with it, and he wanted to measure himself against it. Over the next hour, Lyra showed him the lodge, how the water system worked, where the firewood was kept, how to check the traps, and even how to read the weather by the clouds and wind. Every step was a lesson in awareness and preparation. John realized how unprepared he had been for anything real in life. I could live here, John admitted quietly, almost to himself. If I tried. Lyra looked at him sharply. If you tried. There's a difference between dreaming and doing. The evening settled in and the sky turned shades of orange and purple. The mountains seemed to breathe around them, silent and enormous. John watched the shadows creep along the walls, feeling both awed and humbled. You'll need more than curiosity to stay here, Lyra said. Tomorrow we start with the basics. Fire, water, food, and the mountain's rules. Fail at anyone and you'll regret it. John nodded. He was not afraid, not yet. He was alive with possibility. He had never been tested like this before, and it thrilled him. That night, as he lay on a simple bedroll on the lodge floor, listening to the wind whistle through the trees, he realized something. This inheritance was not about owning a building. It was about discovering what humans could do when forced to rely on their intelligence, courage, and perseverance. And he wanted to see just how far he could go. Lyra's presence was constant but not intrusive. She worked quietly in the background, preparing for the next day. She was both teacher and guardian, and John understood that his survival and his claim to the lodge depended on learning from her. Sleep came slowly. Outside, the mountain was alive with sound, the rustle of trees, the distant cry of a hawk, the whisper of the wind. Inside, John felt the quiet stirrings of determination, curiosity, and respect. This lodge, these mountains, and this fierce, capable human would change him. And he would not be left behind. The next morning, John awoke to the smell of fresh pine and the faint hiss of a small fire burning in the fireplace. The sunlight filtered through the window, catching dust particles that floated lazily in the warm air. Outside, the mountain was alive with the calls of birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. For a moment, John forgot about the city, the traffic, the deadlines. Here, the world was raw, real, and demanding. Lyra was already moving about the lodge, gathering water from a nearby stream using a pulley system that John had barely noticed the night before. Her movements were precise, practiced, almost like a dance she had performed 1,000 times. She noticed him watching and didn't stop. "Breakfast is simple," she said without turning. "If you want to eat, you can help." John stood and followed her outside. The morning air was sharp and cold, making him shiver. The stream sparkled as it rushed over smooth stones, and the mountain seemed to rise endlessly in every direction. John had never felt so small, yet so aware. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Lyra handed him a basket. "Collect firewood, chop it if necessary, and make sure the fire is strong. If you burn your hands, it's your fault." John hesitated for a moment, then grabbed the basket. The wood was heavier than he expected, the bark rough against his palms. He had handled briefcases and coffee mugs all his life, but nothing like this. And yet, as he lifted and stacked the wood, he felt a strange sense of satisfaction. It was physical work, honest work. Every branch he carried reminded him that he could do more than he had ever imagined. By the time the fire was roaring in the lodge, Lyra had prepared a simple breakfast of boiled eggs, herbs from the garden, and freshly drawn water. John sat down and tried to eat, but his appetite was small. He had underestimated the energy required to even survive a single morning in the mountains. "Do you always move like that?" John asked, gesturing toward Lyra's effortless coordination. She raised an eyebrow. "Move like what? Like everything you do seems easy." Lyra smiled faintly. "Nothing is easy. It just looks easy when you've done it enough times. The mountain teaches you quickly or it teaches you painfully." John frowned. "Painfully?" Lyra's smile disappeared. "One mistake, one wrong step, and you can lose more than comfort. The mountain doesn't forgive. That's why I survive." John nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that this was not just a game or a test. It was life and death in the smallest, most disciplined way. After breakfast, Lyra led him outside again. "Today," she said, "we learn about the mountain's rules. Watch and listen. If you ignore them, you will regret it." The first lesson was the trail system. Lyra led John along narrow paths that twisted around cliffs, over streams, and through thick underbrush. Each step required careful attention. One misstep could mean slipping on loose soil or tripping over hidden roots. John stumbled several times, and each time Lyra's sharp eyes noticed. "Stop looking at your feet," she instructed. "See where you're going, feel where your weight is. The mountain tells you what it wants. You just have to listen." John tried to focus. The wind in his hair, the smell of wet earth, the distant sound of running water, all of it was alive. He began to notice small signs: moss that indicated wet ground, rocks that would shift if stepped on, bird calls that warned of danger nearby. Slowly he started moving more confidently. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher and sweat ran down John's back. Yet with every step, every careful movement, he felt a growing sense of mastery. Lyra rarely spoke, but when she did, it was precise and invaluable advice. Around midday they returned to the lodge. John expected rest, but Lyra had another challenge. "Now we hunt," she said. John froze. "Hunt? I don't know how to hunt." "You'll learn," Lyra replied. "We are not taking life unless we need it, but you must know how. Skills are useless if you cannot use them when necessary." They walked to a nearby clearing. Lyra taught him to recognize edible plants, track animals, and even set basic traps. John listened, watched, and practiced. His hands were clumsy at first, his traps uneven, but he was learning. Each failure taught him something new. "You'll get it," Lyra said after he managed to set a simple trap correctly. "Humans are clever. You just have to focus and try." John smiled. For the first time, he felt proud, not because of money, titles, or city achievements, but because of his own ability to adapt, to think, to learn. As the day wore on, clouds began to gather over the peaks. The wind picked up and the sky darkened. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Storm," she said simply. John looked up at the sky. "We can't outrun it, can we?" "No," Lyra said. "We survive it." They rushed back to the lodge, securing windows and doors. Lyra taught John how to brace the roof supports, check the chimney, and ensure the fire wouldn't go out. By the time the first drops fell, the lodge was as ready as it could be. The storm hit with a roar. Rain pounded the roof, lightning split the sky, and wind shook the walls. John felt fear for the first time since arriving. Not fear of Lyra, not fear of being in the mountains, but fear of the mountain itself. It was alive, powerful, and indifferent. Lyra remained calm, moving with confidence. She checked the fire, listened to the wind, and monitored the water from the roof. She guided John through every step, teaching him how to read the sounds of the storm and anticipate danger. By nightfall, the storm had passed. The lodge was intact, the fire still burning, and John sat exhausted but exhilarated. He had faced the mountain's challenge and survived, not alone but guided by another human's knowledge. "You did well today," Lyra said quietly. "Most city people would have frozen or run. You didn't. That's a start." John smiled, feeling a mix of pride and relief. "I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra shook her head. "No, you could have. Humans are clever. You just needed a chance to see what you could do. Now you have it." That night, as John lay on his bedroll, he reflected on the day. The mountain had tested him in ways he had never imagined. His body ached, his hands were sore, but his mind was alive with possibility. He realized that survival wasn't just about strength or endurance. It was about awareness, quick thinking, and the ability to adapt. And that was something humans were exceptionally good at. Outside, the moon shone through the clouds, silvering the peaks and valleys. John could hear the distant sound of a stream, the rustle of leaves, and the faint cry of a nocturnal bird. The mountain was calm now, but he knew it could change in an instant. Lyra's presence beside him was quiet but commanding. She did not need to assert dominance. Her skills and confidence spoke for themselves. John understood that if he wanted to claim the lodge, he would have to match her, not in toughness or aggression, but in ingenuity, courage, and resilience. And he was willing to try. Tomorrow, the real lessons would begin. The mountain would push harder, and John knew it. But for the first time, he felt ready, not just to survive, but to thrive. Humans had conquered cities, machines, and problems that seemed impossible. Why not the mountain? Why not this lodge? Why not him? The wind whispered through the trees outside, and John felt a strange thrill. The lodge was more than a building, more than inheritance. It was a challenge, a test, and a proving ground. And he was ready to prove himself. The next morning, John woke to a sky painted with gold and pink. The storm had passed, leaving the mountain crisp and clear. Birds chirped and called to one another, and the sun reflected off the dew-laden leaves. John felt a quiet thrill. Today, he thought, would be different. He had learned the basics, survived the storm, and gained a new respect for the mountain, and for Lyra. Lyra was already awake, checking the fire and preparing a simple breakfast of porridge and dried fruit. She did not speak much. Her presence was calm, her movements precise. John watched her quietly, noticing the care in everything she did. Every item had a purpose, every step was intentional. He realized that living here required attention, patience, and respect for the environment. "Ready for today?" Lyra asked, glancing at him with sharp eyes. "I think so," John replied. "What's next?" Lyra handed him a small tool kit. "Today, you learn to improve the lodge. We will make it stronger, more self-sufficient. You will see that humans can adapt, even in a place that seems impossible." John followed her outside. The lodge, though sturdy, had several weak points she wanted to reinforce. Loose boards, a chimney that needed support, and small leaks in the roof would become problems if not fixed. Lyra explained each detail carefully. "Humans survive not because the world bends to them," she said, "but because they think, plan, and solve problems. Every skill you learn multiplies your chances of survival." John listened, absorbing everything. He had never thought of survival this way. In the city, problems were solved with money, tools, and schedules. Here, solutions required creativity, resourcefulness, and teamwork. For hours, they worked together. John hammered nails into the roof, learning the proper angle and pressure. Lyra carried heavy logs, her movements smooth and effortless, then guided him in building small supports for the walls. Every task required thought and precision. Mistakes were costly, not life-threatening yet, but enough to show him the stakes. Around midday, they took a short break. John sat on a rock, wiping sweat from his brow, and looked at the view. The mountains stretched endlessly, peaks piercing the sky, valleys hidden in mist. The lodge felt small compared to the vastness, yet he realized how much humans could accomplish with effort and intelligence. "You're doing better than I expected," Lyra said, sitting beside him. "Most people give up when the work gets hard. You keep going." John smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "I've never done anything like this before, but I like it. It feels real." Lyra nodded. "It is real. Every problem you face here has consequences. Every solution is your own. You can't hide behind machines or rules. You survive or you don't." After lunch, Lyra led John to the garden. She had planted hardy vegetables, herbs, and berries. Today, she wanted him to learn food management. John learned how to prune plants for better growth, identify which berries were safe, and even how to create small irrigation channels from the nearby stream. This is how humans thrive, Lyra explained. Not by luck, but by understanding, planning, and acting. You see what is needed and make it happen. John nodded. He had never considered gardening a survival skill, but now he saw its importance. Food was essential, and knowing how to manage it could mean the difference between life and death. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Lyra brought John to a small workshop inside the lodge. Here, she taught him how to repair tools, sharpen knives, and maintain equipment. Every tool was vital. One broken knife could compromise their entire operation. You see, Lyra said, humans can think. We can adapt, learn, and improve. Machines can fail, nature can fight back, but humans find a way. John worked alongside her, careful and methodical. His hands were no longer clumsy. He had learned how to hold the tools correctly, how to anticipate the work, how to plan. Each small success built confidence, and each minor failure taught him humility. Evening came, painting the sky with orange and purple. The air cooled and the first stars began to appear. John and Lyra sat outside the lodge, looking at the mountains. A quiet understanding had grown between them. They did not speak of friendship or rivalry. They spoke with actions, respect, and shared purpose. "You've changed," Lyra said quietly. "Yesterday you would have panicked. Today you can think and act at the same time." John smiled. "I'm learning from the best." Lyra shook her head slightly. "No, you're learning from yourself. I just show you the way." Humans are clever, but they don't know what they're capable of until they are tested. John considered this as the sky darkened. The mountain was calm now, but he knew it could change at any moment. Yet he felt prepared, more than he had ever felt in his life. He had learned to observe, anticipate, and act. The mountain had taught him, and he had listened. That night, John helped Lyra prepare the lodge for cold temperatures. They checked the firewood, secured the windows, and reinforced the roof supports. Every action was deliberate, every movement purposeful. John realized that survival required constant attention, not just occasional effort. It was a full-time commitment, a constant dance with nature. As they settled down, a sudden sound outside caught John's attention, a rustling in the trees closer than usual. His heart raced. Lyra noticed immediately. "Stay calm," she whispered. "The mountain has visitors sometimes. Could be animals, could be wind. Watch and learn." John peered through the window. Shadows moved, large and deliberate. He realized the lesson. Survival required awareness, not panic. He began noting the shapes, the movement, and the sounds. After a tense moment, the rustling stopped. Lyra smiled faintly. "You notice patterns. That's what matters. Panic gets humans killed. Observation saves them." John exhaled, feeling a mix of fear and pride. The lesson was clear. The mountain demanded respect, attention, and intelligence. Humans could meet that demand if they tried. The night passed quietly. John slept fitfully, thinking about the day. Every task, every lesson, every movement had built his confidence and skill. He realized that the lodge was not just a building. It was a test, a challenge, and a classroom. And Lyra, with her calm authority and sharp intelligence, was the perfect guide. By morning, John had a sense of purpose he had never known in the city. The mountains were harsh, demanding, and unpredictable, but they could also teach, reward, and inspire. Humans had thrived in cities, deserts, and oceans, solving impossible problems, surviving against odds, and creating solutions. Why not here? Why not now? Lyra handed him a basket of tools and supplies. "Today," she said, "we expand your skills. You will learn to work with me, not against me. That is the only way humans survive together. Alone, you are limited. Together, clever humans can solve any problem." John nodded. He understood. Yesterday, he had survived the storm. Today, he had learned the importance of preparation, observation, and adaptability. Tomorrow he would learn the strength of collaboration, and he was ready. Outside, the mountain seemed endless, yet John felt no fear, only possibility, only determination. Humans could endure, humans could learn, humans could overcome. And he would prove it, one day, one lesson, one challenge at a time. The next morning, the mountain air was crisp and sharp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. John woke to the sound of birds singing and a quiet hum of activity from the lodge. For several days now, life had settled into a rhythm. Lessons with Lyra, work on the lodge, learning to survive and adapt. But today, the calm seemed different. He could sense a tension in the air. Lyra had already gone outside, moving quickly among the logs and tools. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the horizon as if searching for something invisible. John followed, curious. "Something's coming," Lyra said without preamble. "I can feel it. The wind carries more than sound." "Watch and listen." John looked around. The mountains were peaceful, trees swaying gently, clouds drifting lazily above. He didn't see anything unusual. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Humans often think the world ends at what they see," Lyra said. "The mountain, the land, the air, they carry signs, patterns that reveal intent. Watch." John squinted toward the valley. At first he saw nothing. Then in the distance he noticed movement, a dust cloud rising along the old dirt road that led to the lodge. It was small at first, then grew larger. John's heart beat faster. "Who is that?" he asked. Lyra's expression hardened. "People who think they can take what is not theirs. They have machines, tools, and arrogance. But they do not have what we have: awareness, preparation, and will." John felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The lessons of the past days suddenly became critical. Every skill he had learned would now be tested. "Quickly," Lyra said, "we prepare." They worked together, moving efficiently. Lyra guided John as they secured doors, reinforced windows, and placed tools and supplies in strategic locations. He realized that these preparations were not just physical, they were tactical. Every item had a purpose, every placement a reason. "You need to understand," Lyra said as she tightened a support beam. "Humans are clever. We can adapt faster than machines, outthink stronger opponents, and use the environment to our advantage. That is why we survive." The sound of engines grew louder. Through the trees, John could now see a vehicle approaching, a large metal truck carrying men in uniforms. They were clearly professionals, confident in their power, but they had no knowledge of the land, no respect for its rules. Lyra gave John a small nod. "Time to act. Remember what you've learned." She led him to a vantage point where they could observe without being seen. Using binoculars, John noticed the men scanning the area, seemingly unaware of how difficult the terrain was. Lyra pointed to natural obstacles, loose rocks that could be rolled down, narrow paths that could be blocked, streams that could slow movement. "These humans are strong," she said, "but strength alone does not win. We will use our knowledge, our brains, and the environment." John felt a rush of determination. For the first time, he understood the full meaning of Lyra's lessons. This was survival, yes, but it was also strategy, planning, and ingenuity. Lyra began setting up simple but clever deterrents: tripwires with noise makers, decoy tracks leading away from the lodge, and subtle signals to mislead their approach. John helped, placing rocks and branches exactly where she indicated. Every move was deliberate, designed to confuse and delay the intruders without causing harm. "You're doing well," Lyra said. "Humans think in patterns, they follow expectations. We will bend those patterns, outsmart them, not fight them." Hours passed. The men in the truck advanced slowly, clearly growing frustrated as the path became more challenging. Tripwires made small thuds, decoy tracks led them in circles, and the mountain itself seemed to resist their progress. John felt a thrill. The lodge, which had seemed vulnerable just days ago, now became a fortress of intellect and preparation. By late afternoon, the intruders were close enough that their voices could be heard faintly. They were arguing, confused, unsure of the terrain. John and Lyra stayed hidden, observing. One mistake, Lyra whispered, and humans fail, but one clear mind working with another and we can change the outcome. John remembered every lesson, observing patterns, anticipating moves, using tools cleverly. He suggested a small modification, moving a fallen log to block a narrow passage. Lyra smiled faintly and agreed. Together, they acted quickly, the log rolling perfectly into place. When the intruders arrived at the blocked path, they cursed and tried to lift it, wasting precious time. The sun was dipping low when John noticed something else, shadowy figures climbing the slopes in an attempt to bypass the obstacles. Lyra guided him to set small, harmless but effective diversions, loose rocks that shifted, creating noise, and carefully arranged branches that made the slope appear steeper. The intruders slowed, cautious and increasingly uncertain. John realized something profound. This was not brute force or violence that would win. They were using human intelligence, observation, and creativity to protect what was theirs. Machines and strength could not match adaptability and ingenuity. Night fell and the intruders were still trying to navigate the mountain, frustrated and exhausted. Lyra and John returned to the lodge, checking every detail one more time. "You see now," Lyra said quietly, "humans are unstoppable when we use our minds. The mountain is challenging, but it cannot stop us. Others can try to take what we have, but clever humans always find a way." John nodded, awe in his eyes. He had witnessed the power of preparation, strategy, and adaptation firsthand. It was thrilling and empowering. As the lodge settled into quiet again, John felt a new sense of purpose. The external threat had been daunting, but it had also shown him something essential. Humans could overcome far greater challenges than they often imagined. Strength alone was not enough. Awareness, creativity, and cooperation were far more potent. Lyra stood outside for a while, looking at the stars, the wind tugging at her hair. John joined her, silently observing the sky. The mountain was vast and unpredictable, yet tonight it seemed calm, almost respectful. "They won't try again tonight," Lyra said, "but they may return, and we will be ready." John smiled faintly. "We'll be ready." "Humans survive," Lyra said. "We survive because we think, because we plan, because we use every advantage. We are adaptable, clever, and relentless. Never forget that." John looked at her, realizing that she had taught him more than survival skills. She had taught him confidence, awareness, and the power of human ingenuity. He understood now that claiming the lodge was not about ownership or authority. It was about proving capability, resourcefulness, and resilience. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees and the mountains settled under the moonlight, John felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The lodge was more than a home, it was a proving ground. He had learned to adapt, to observe, and to think ahead. He had faced an external threat and survived, not by force but by strategy, creativity, and collaboration. And he knew this was only the beginning. Humans had overcome deserts, oceans, cities, and wars. They had built machines, solved problems that seemed impossible, and thrived against all odds. The mountain was no different. Here, intelligence, preparation, and courage would carry the day. John glanced at Lyra. She was calm, confident, and unshakable. He realized that to truly claim the lodge, he would need to continue learning, continue observing, and continue applying everything humans did best. And he was ready to do exactly that. The night deepened, and the stars above shone brightly, a reminder of the vast possibilities that awaited. John felt ready for the challenges ahead. The lodge, the mountain, and the lessons of survival were his proving ground. And he would not fail. The morning air was crisp and cold, carrying the scent of pine and earth. John woke early as he had learned to do, alert to every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, the whisper of wind through the trees. The mountain no longer seemed threatening. It had become a teacher, a challenge, and a proving ground. Lyra was already outside, checking the perimeter of the lodge. John followed, carrying a basket of tools. For the first time, he felt confident in his abilities. He could read the signs of the land, anticipate dangers, and act with precision. The mountain had tested him, taught him, and now he felt prepared for anything. Today, Lyra said, we consolidate. We make this lodge more than a home. We make it a symbol of human capability, of preparation, intelligence, and cooperation. Are you ready? John nodded. Yes, let's do it. They worked together to strengthen the lodge's defenses. John reinforced doors and windows, Lyra repaired the roof, and together they built a lookout post overlooking the valley. Every addition was practical, but each also carried a sense of permanence, a statement that this lodge belonged to humans who could endure, adapt, and thrive. As they worked, John reflected on everything he had learned. The lessons had not just been about survival, they had been about awareness, ingenuity, and courage. Humans had conquered challenges far greater than this mountain, deserts, oceans, cities, even the stars. And here in this remote lodge, he felt the same power coursing through him. By midday, the lodge was stronger, better organized, and more self-sufficient. Lyra had taught John how to create small systems for water collection, food storage, and energy management. Every improvement was a testament to human intelligence, the ability to observe, plan, and implement solutions in a challenging environment. John felt a quiet pride. He had arrived at the lodge as a visitor, uncertain and inexperienced. Now he could work alongside Lyra, anticipate problems, and apply what he had learned. The mountain had tested him, but he had proven himself. Late in the afternoon, John noticed movement in the valley below. A small group of people approached, the same ones who had tried to claim the lodge before. John felt no fear this time. He had learned the mountain's lessons, understood its patterns, and applied human ingenuity to anticipate threats. Lyra noticed too. They're coming back, she said, but we are ready. Watch. Using the skills and strategies they had practiced, John and Lyra prepared subtle, non-violent deterrents. They rearranged rocks, set decoys, and used the natural terrain to confuse and slow the intruders. When the group reached the lodge, they found obstacles and signs that made the path difficult to navigate. Confused and frustrated, they eventually retreated, realizing that brute force alone would not succeed here. John felt a surge of triumph. This was not about defeating someone else through aggression. It was about applying human intelligence, preparation, and adaptability. Humans could overcome challenges that seemed impossible by observing, learning, and thinking ahead. As the intruders disappeared into the distance, Lyra turned to John. You did well, she said. You have learned quickly. You can survive, adapt, and thrive here. That is what humans do best. John smiled. I couldn't have done it without you. Lyra shook her head. No. You did it yourself. I only guided you. Humans have incredible potential. You just had to see it in yourself. The evening sky turned shades of orange and purple, and the first stars appeared above the peaks. John and Lyra sat outside the lodge, watching the mountains stretch endlessly around them. For the first time, John felt a true sense of belonging. He had arrived as an heir, uncertain and inexperienced, but he had become something more, a capable human, aware, skilled, and resilient. This lodge, John said quietly, it's more than a building now, it's proof. Proof that humans can adapt, survive, and thrive anywhere. Lyra nodded. Exactly. It is ours now, not just in paper but in action. We have claimed it with skill, intelligence, and perseverance. That is the only way humans truly claim something. John looked at her, understanding fully. This was the essence of humanity. The ability to face challenges, to learn, to apply knowledge, and to overcome adversity with intelligence and courage. It was not about fighting or destroying. It was about proving capability. As night fell, the lodge glowed with the warm light of the fireplace. John and Lyra checked the perimeter one last time and settled inside. The storm, the challenges, the intruders, all had been tests, and they had passed. Humans had prevailed not through strength alone, but through ingenuity, preparation, and cooperation. John reflected on the journey from the moment he had first arrived. He had been unprepared, inexperienced, and naive. The lodge had been a mystery, the mountain a challenge, and Lyra an enigma. Now he was confident, capable, and aware. He had learned to read the land, plan ahead, and adapt quickly. He had proven that humans could survive and thrive in even the most demanding conditions. Lyra spoke softly as they prepared to sleep. The mountain will continue to test us, that is its nature, but now we are ready. Humans endure, humans adapt, and humans excel. Remember that. John nodded, feeling a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. The lodge was no longer just an inheritance. It was a testament to human potential. He had proven himself, not through violence or dominance, but through intelligence, adaptability, and cooperation. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, the stars shone brightly, and the mountain settled into quiet. John felt a connection not just to the land, but to the essence of humanity itself. Clever, resilient, adaptable, humans could overcome challenges that seemed impossible. And he had done it. The next morning, John and Lyra began another day, not as student and teacher, but as partners, capable humans working together. The lodge was safe, the mountain understood, and the lessons of survival deeply ingrained. John realized something profound. This was more than a victory. It was a legacy. Every tool repaired, every skill learned, every problem solved was proof that humans could thrive anywhere. The lodge was theirs, not because of inheritance or ownership, but because they had earned it through ingenuity, courage, and determination. The mountain stretched endlessly around them, majestic and powerful. John felt a surge of excitement for the future. There would be challenges ahead, storms, intruders, and the unpredictable forces of nature, but he knew they could face them. Humans had conquered deserts, oceans, cities, and even the skies. The mountain was no different. As the sun rose over the peaks, John looked at the lodge, the land, and Lyra. Together, they had proven something essential. Humans could adapt, overcome, and thrive in any environment. The lodge was theirs, secured not by paper or law, but by the qualities that made humanity remarkable. For the first time, John felt truly at home. The mountain, the lodge, and the challenges they had faced were no longer obstacles. They were proof of human resilience, ingenuity, and spirit. And he knew that as long as humans relied on their intelligence, courage, and cooperation, there was nothing they could not achieve. Lyra smiled faintly. "This is just the beginning," she said. John nodded, feeling a deep sense of anticipation. The lodge was safe, the mountain respected, and humanity proven once again. Together they would face the future, confident that humans, clever and resourceful, could conquer any challenge. And in that moment, John understood fully. The lodge, the mountain, and the challenges they had overcome were more than survival. They were a celebration of human potential, a legacy of perseverance, and a testament to the extraordinary power of being human.